Good evening, everybody. This is the May 12th meeting of 2022 of the Rent Control Board of Santa Monica. It's called to order. Would the Secretary please call the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Sultan.
Here.
Commissioner Phyllis.
Here.
Commissioner Teroses.
Here.
And Vice Chair Foster.
Here. Anyone wishing to address the board on a specific item on tonight's agenda should have contacted our board secretary prior to the meeting, but if you'd like to make a public comment, feel free to request to do so in the chat function in Blue Jeans, or you may dial 1-408-740-7256 and using meeting ID number 142-963-753 and passcode 9509. This is also in printed materials on our website, and if you click on the agendas on our website, you can see all those long numbers. I wish we could put it up on the screen, but we can't. We'll recognize the speakers and arrange to have them speak when it's their turn in the queue. And we'll now move on to the minutes. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of the board's last meeting?
I'll move that.
Thank you, Commissioner Sultan. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, we can call the roll.
Yes, Commissioner Phyllis.
Yes.
Commissioner Teroses.
Yes.
Commissioner Sultan.
Yes.
And Vice Chair Foster.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. Item 6, special agenda items. We have any brief announcements, commendations? Ms. Condon, do you have something for us?
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. I have a few announcements this evening. First, as of this afternoon, I wanted to report on the status of the rent relief applications that were submitted to the state. And as of this afternoon, the Housing is Key dashboard shows that of the 2,754 Santa Monica households who requested assistance by submitting applications by March 31st, 75% of them have received assistance. It's more than 2,080 households. They've averaged assistance of about $15,200 per household, and more than $31.6 million has come to Santa Monica. But even with this assistance, many tenants are still facing difficulties paying their rent and potentially facing eviction. So I did want to mention that last night, as part of the City Council special study session on an update on local efforts addressing the homelessness crisis, one of the pillars of the city's program is prevention and keeping people housed. So last night, the council took the action to authorize funding of up to $220,000 to LAFLA to assist tenants with facing eviction actions. And this is in addition to the pilot program that is currently running for the right to counsel. So thankfully, there will be some additional resources in the community to help tenants facing eviction. And then I wanted to announce that we have 2 seminars coming up next week. We sent our newsletter out. It was out in the mail. People were receiving it at the beginning of this week. And we announced both the launch of our new information system and these 2 seminars that we will be holding. The landlord seminar will be on Tuesday morning, May 17th from 10 to noon. And the tenant seminar will be May 19th. Thursday from 10 to noon. Both will be virtual, and we'll cover basic information about the rent control law, people's rights and responsibilities, and we'll also provide information about the new Civics platform, which is our online public-facing portal portion of the database. So those are the announcements I have this evening.
Great, thank you so much.
Question.
All right, moving on to item 7, public comment.
Wait, Anastasia, I have a question.
Oh, yes. You have a comment? Yes, please.
Sorry, I just want for ourselves and the public. So you're saying approximately 70% of the people that have applied for state relief have gotten it. Do you have any indication as to why the process is taking so long and what might be the holdup for the other 30% who haven't gotten it?
No, I really don't know. It's, a state program. I believe that they added additional resources to the program to help expedite this, but I do not know why there have been delays. But, I think it is good that 75% of the people have received assistance. But I'm sorry, I don't have any information about that.
I will say a few constituents I've been working with in attempting to aid them, connect them with these services, have kept me posted on their progress because they still have not received theirs. Two different families whose businesses they worked for were actively shut down, for many months. And so this is rent from that time period. They have been notified because the city staff helped them fill out their applications properly and corrected a couple of errors, whatever those were, that one has been notified that they've been approved and that the funds should be coming while their landlord continues to really bug them. And the other has been told that hers is in the works and not denied. But, so one has you've been approved, it'll be there eventually. Another has, it should still, it's very disconcerting for those folks to wait and wait and wait when others have received it and they still haven't. It's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. I wonder if there's a way to get our lobbyists to get some more information about if there's anything that we can do in terms of folks we could talk to, or if the city is. I know that at the county we have a liaison who's working directly with the state to resolve issues, and I'm just wondering if we have like a similar liaison at the city. Because I think with the fact that the eviction protections have basically expired, there's a lot of I'm seeing a lot more complaints of misinformation out there about what protections are available to both the tenants and the landlords. And I just want to make sure that we're trying to expeditiously get the funding out. So I know it's not necessarily our problem, but I want to try to be as proactive as possible. So that's why I asked if maybe Mr. Augusta could help us.
Yeah. We will certainly talk with Mr. Augusta about that. Yes.
Great.
Can I ask a question too?
Yes.
Does anybody know is the city helping people that have actually been denied? Because there's an appeals process if you're denied through the ERAP program. And I know folks could go probably to LAFLA. Maybe they can help them with that. But maybe there's some resources at the city as well, the same folks that are shepherding people through the process.
I don't know, but we will look into that. I don't know I know the city attorney's office was helping people with some applications, and we will follow up with them, whether they're also helping with appeals.
Oh, okay,
and
great.
The city attorney should be commended. All the feedback I've heard from tenants who've applied who needed their help received their help, and that's great.
Yeah.
That's great to hear.
All right, anything else on the special announcements?
That's all I had.
Okay. So we'll move on to public comment. Item 7, this is the time set aside for members of the public to address the board on matters that are not included on tonight's agenda, but that are in the board's subject matter jurisdiction generally. Please note that the board cannot take action at tonight's meeting on any matter not included on our agenda. Alvin, how many people do we have?
We do not have any speaker requests for item number 7.
Okay, very good. So everyone's on the specific items. All right, very good. All right. All right, item 12, administrative items. Item 12A, announcement of the 2022 annual general adjustment and consideration of imposing a dollar amount ceiling to the 2022 general adjustment. May we have a staff report, please?
Before we do that quickly, Vice Chair Foster, could you repeat the call-in ID and passcode?
Yep, I sure will. And if anyone is logged into the Blue Jeans meeting, Alvin can put it in the chat as well. It's in there now, but I will repeat it. And again, it's on our website under our agendas on the website as well. If you can't take it down this quickly, I understand it's a lot of digits. The phone number 1-408-740-7256. And you enter the meeting ID 142963-753, followed by the pound sign. And participant passcode is 9509, followed by the pound sign. I know it's a lot. All right. If we can have a staff report on item 12A, please.
Okay, as you said, this is the announcement of the general adjustment for 2022. And since the rent control law was amended by Santa Monica voters in 2012, the general adjustment has been calculated by taking 75% of the change in the consumer price index from March of the previous year to March of the current year, as reported by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This year, that amount is 8.5%. When we apply the 75% to that, the calculation is 6.375. However, there's also a provision within the rent control law that says the maximum general adjustment for any year is 6%. So this year, for the first time since 2012, when Measure GA passed, the general adjustment will be 6%. The law also provides that the board may apply, after holding a public hearing and hearing from the public, the board may apply a cap or a maximum amount on the general adjustment. The methodology for determining the ceiling is by taking the 85th percentile of the maximum allowable rents for all controlled units. And this year, that's $3,239. And then the 85th percentile of the maximum allowable rent for all controlled units with a base rent established before January 1 of 1999. So these are the units occupied by long-term tenants. And this year, the 85th percentile is 1,440. So we add those two together and then divide by 2, and that amount this year is $2,339.50. And then we multiply that by the general adjustment of 6%, and that comes up with a ceiling of $140.37, but it's rounded to $140. So tonight, the board should vote to set a public hearing for June 9th so that we can hear from the public on the issue of whether or not to apply a cap, and then the board will make that decision on June 9th. So that's the staff report. Oh, I can also say that the $140 ceiling, if the board adopts it, would apply to all rents of $2,325 or more.
Thank you for the public acknowledgement of the GA, its calculation, and the fact that we will hold this public hearing at our next regular meeting. Thank you. All right, item 12B. We have a staff, or do you want to present the budget, the fiscal year 2021-22 third quarter budget report?
Okay, so I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. Ho.
Yes, I'm sorry. There was actually one request to speak on item 12A.
All
right.
Let's go back and hear from that constituent.
Mr. Davids, you have been unmuted. You will have 3 minutes to address the board. Please go ahead.
Yes, I hope I'm not tripping over myself again as I did at the April 28th meeting. I was under the impression that the ceiling or the cap was going to be discussed tonight, and I wanted to bring up some valid points concerning that. But if this is now going to be continued to the June 9th meeting, then I would simply reserve my comments for June 9th as opposed to for tonight, so I just don't trip over myself as I did at the last board meeting. So that's entirely up to you and entirely up to protocol.
Mr. Davids, that's up to you, but I agree with you. It would be completely appropriate to speak at the public hearing next month. And just as a reminder to you and the public, what we do is every year after the data becomes available, after the March to March time period, we have to wait for the LA County area number to be reported. And this is simply a public acknowledgement of the calculation achieved by rent measured GA. So we announce it, we announce the formula for a possible ceiling, and then we let the public ruminate on that for a month, and then we bring it back for a public hearing next month. So yes, we're not taking any action on that item tonight.
Then what I will do is simply reserve my comments for the June 9th meeting.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you for calling. You're
Sure.
welcome. Item 12B. Tracy, take it away. I think you're muted, Tracy.
Thank you. The main purpose of tonight's budget study session is to review the proposed budget for fiscal year 22-23 and answer your questions, receive direction on any changes you'd like to consider, and then vote on the budget or set the budget for public hearing and adoption on Thursday, June 9th. Before we do that, it's always helpful to review the board's experience as of the third quarter of the current fiscal year. The board did receive a mid-year report for the fiscal year in March, so tonight we're just providing a brief update, and the written report provides additional details. Current projections show that by year-end, revenue is expected to be about $25,000 higher than the $5,284,000 originally anticipated. The variation is due primarily to higher registration fee collections of about $24,000 and higher than anticipated interest earnings in the third quarter. It now appears that expenditures will be approximately $24,000 more than the adopted budget of $5,505,000. Savings of about $4,300 in the supplies and expenditures or expenses category and $2,200 in the capital outlay will help offset over expenditures of approximately $31,000 in the salary and wages category for overtime and as needed. Given the increased revenue collections and even despite the slightly increased expenditures, we anticipate the originally projected deficit of $221,000 will be reduced by about $1,000 by year end. The fifth payment to the city of $51,583 for the 2017 loan on the PERS prepayment will be transferred to the city at the end of the fiscal year. The written third quarter report provides details on some line items in which we're projecting over expenditures and others in which we project reduced expenditures. Rather than detail those again, I'm just happy to answer any questions you have about them or any portion of the third quarter report. But we really just do that to summarize, and then the bigger part of tonight's meeting is the presentation of next year's budget. But if you have any questions, either I or Ms. Noseworthy, who is our budget analyst, is here with us, and she can also answer questions.
I have one. Overtime, $30,000 in overtime and $30,000 in as needed. Could you talk about those a little bit further?
All right. Well, in the current year, we've had significant time devoted to the creation of the database. We've been spending a lot of time developing that. So in this year's budget, there were, I don't have it in front of me. Lima, do you have the numbers? I don't know what
That's okay. Take your time. I mean, if it's attributed fully to the database, then I mean that's.
Well, that is the primary thing that has been drawing on overtime for the past several years. You'll see in the next year's budget, we're projecting much lower in terms of overtime because the database is essentially in place. We're making some improvements on it, but this year's overtime is primarily due to the development of the database.
Okay, that's satisfactory as an answer. It's all, with it all being in one category, that's fine. I was trying to see if it wasn't a problem in our budgeting or allocation of time for our regular employees, but it seems like it's not. So thank you for that answer. Does anyone else have a question about the 12B, or do we want to move on to the full budget in 12C?
I'm fine to move on.
Oh, what's that, Carolyn?
I'm fine to move on.
Very good. All right, staff, let's move on, and board, let's move on to 12C, the presentation of the proposed operating budget.
All right, so tonight's study session provides an opportunity for the board to review the proposed fiscal year 22-23 budget before setting it for public hearing and adoption on June 9th. This is an informal discussion, so feel free to stop me with any questions and comments as we go along. The rent control law provides that before July 1st of each year, the board must hold a public hearing and adopt a budget for the upcoming fiscal year. To finance the agency's reasonable and necessary expenses, the board charges landlords an annual per unit registration fee. Owners who pay the fee by August 1st and are in compliance with the law may pass through half of the fee to tenants as a monthly surcharge on their rent. The proposed budget represents our best estimate of the board's revenue and expenses for the coming year. Because the budget predicts future events, it's an educated forecast, but as always, we strive to be as accurate as possible while conservatively projecting likely income and expenses. This year, we're recommending an increase in the annual registration fee to $228. The fee was last increased in 2017, and historically the board has increased the fee when the reserve fund is not sufficient to cover the budget and retain the city's recommended operating contingency of 15% of the year's anticipated expenditures, plus funds to cover earned vacation and sick time benefits for board employees. If there is no increase in the registration fee, the deficit for fiscal year 22-23 would exceed $500,000, leaving the reserves more than $560,000 below the required minimum at year end, which would not be fiscally responsible and would be a departure from the board's usual practice. The proposed operating budget for next year projects operating expenditures of $5,807,000 and revenue of $6,108,000, resulting in a projected surplus of approximately $300,000 that will help replenish the board's fund balance or reserve account, which will be reduced by this year's anticipated $220,000 deficit. The proposed budget maintains the current operations of the agency and provides a small cushion to address costs associated with new initiatives and projects and retirements of long-term employees that may occur in the coming year. Details on each line item are within the text of the attached budget document. I have a little PowerPoint presentation, so I will show that. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Alvin, can you, or Lima, can you help me? How do I share my screen here?
You should have a content sharing window towards the center.
Right, okay, content sharing. But I don't want to, does it know which screen I want to share? Okay.
You'll be able to, if you
got
have
it.
more than one monitor. Okay.
Thank you. All right, so you see, let's see. So this slide shows the organizational structure of the agency, and in a service organization like ours, our major resources are the people who provide services to the community and advise the board. Are you seeing the slide, the org chart?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, in fiscal year 22-23, the agency will have 24 positions, a reduction of 1 from the current year, which results from the retirement of the systems administrator, programmer, analyst, who's planning to retire at the end of June. His replacement, the technical services analyst, joined us in December 2021 to assist with the development and implementation of the new information system. In addition to our permanent staff members, a couple of as-needed or temporary employees will continue to assist us. A temporary employee will assist the hearings department by handling many of the mediations related to decreased petitions and excess rent complaints, and a retired information analyst will assist in the busy summer months as a new information coordinator who joins us next week is being trained. We've allocated $52,500 in the upcoming budget to cover the cost of as-needed employees. So the next few slides show the agency's goals for the coming year. With the launch of our new property and rent tracking system on January 31st, we've made significant progress on our ongoing goal of increasing efficiencies through the use of technology. We'll continue to make progress in this area in a few ways. With a few months of experience using the Infor system in our office, we are now launching Civics, the public-facing portion of the system. The web-based portal will allow constituents to submit frequently filed agency forms online, and owners will be able to view information about their properties once we connect their user accounts with those properties. As part of the Civics launch, we will conduct constituent training in using the system to file forms and petitions, pay fees, and access documents in the agency's property site files. To provide for enhancements and continual improvements of the system, the fiscal year 22-23 budget includes funds for a professional services agreement with TruePoint Solutions, the developer and implementer of the system. We'll also expand the web-based document portal this year to provide searchable access to the full history of board packets for public meetings. And we'll continue to leverage electronic communications, social media campaigns, and expanded email lists to broaden engagement with landlords and tenants. Another way we plan to improve efficiencies is by evaluating our existing practices and procedures. We'll look closely at the board's regulations to see if there are some changes that we can recommend that would enable streamlining some agency practices. And we'll also look closely, we're going to closely review the hearings process to identify ways to reduce the time from petition filing to reaching a final decision on cases. Our experience over the past 2.5 years has shown us that for some constituents, remote communications and hearings are a big plus. So part of our review of processes will be with an eye to balancing in-person and remote services. To do this, we're working on a plan to maintain an option for parties to participate in meetings and mediations and hearings virtually. And as we have for the past 2 years, throughout all of our processes, we'll ensure that staff and members of the public can conduct their business with the board safely and within public health parameters and restrictions. In the always important goal of ensuring compliance with the rent control law, we will plan for any possible changes in the law resulting from voter support for board recommended charter changes, as well as any changes to state laws that impact agency practices. We will also initiate civil actions as necessary to enforce compliance with the rent control law and pursue unpaid registration fee balances through collection activities in small claims courts. And we will also continue implementation of the agency's document retention schedule to facilitate responses to public records requests and eliminate outdated documents. In collaboration with other city departments, that will be a big area of focus for us in the coming year. And by working with other city departments on common goals, we're going to work to streamline and improve processes to ensure tenant rights and protections are supported by city actions. We will ensure property owners and tenants understand their rights, responsibilities, and obligations. And we will improve and maintain access to the agency's web pages and special features on our website. And as I've mentioned in other years, we're also preparing for staff changes. We'll experience another retirement this year, as I mentioned, and others will likely come in the next fiscal year. So that means we'll continue cross-training existing staff and develop new skills and create effective succession planning, and training of new staff will continue to be a priority for the coming year. So now I'm going to stop sharing this. So we'd welcome your comments and ideas on any of these goals. And then after that, we will move into the discussion of the budget itself.
I am thrilled to hear about your plans to streamline the hearings process and to take a look at changes to get to results faster. I know that that's been a source of a lot of public comment and constituent communications that I know I've received, I'm sure others have received, and have long been just concerned about that we always look for the best practices as things change. And I'm glad to hear that we're still going to have remote options. I know for a lot of seniors or the disabled that that's a very big deal to have to come all the way downtown repeatedly away from their adaptive devices and such. So glad to hear that. I don't have any other questions on this at that time. Does any other commissioner wish to speak at the moment, or let Tracy continue?
Well, I think you were asking for feedback, it sounds like, right, Tracy?
Sure.
I mean, I think everything sounds great. I too agree that we need to streamline the process. I like that we're bringing in folks to try to mediate some of these. I think it's really important that people are heard in a timely manner, so I really appreciate that. Definitely understand the need to increase the registration fee and supportive of that. I guess I would say just continuing to adapt to the new. I just want to say I've received a lot of negative complaints about the new website. I know that we are trying, we got what we got and we didn't have a choice. I totally get that. But anything that we can do like proactively to reach out to our constituents, hopefully we're getting more email addresses, hopefully we're communicating more than just through the quarterly kind of mailings, and I hope to see next year just more emphasis on proactive outreach to both the landlords and the tenants, and other than that, I don't have any questions.
All right, seeing nothing else, we will let Tracy continue to the next section.
Okay, so now we're moving on to the expenditures. And for the board, you'll find the proposed 22-23 agency budget tab in your budget book. Behind that tab, you'll find the agency budget page. So I'm going to go back and share again so that the public can see a summary of the budget. All right. A moment. Okay, so this slide summarizes the budget, but the budget text provides an itemization of each line, and that's on pages 2 through 15 of the budget document. I'm going to discuss a few specific items, and then Ms. Noseworthy and I will be happy to address any of your comments or questions. So the fiscal year 22-23 budget maintains the current operations of the agency. It includes funds for 1 to 2 board meetings per month and provision of the highest level of public service in our day-to-day operations. It includes funds for 2 newsletters and the summer mailing, plus an additional mailing to inform property owners and tenants about the enhanced services and processes available through the new property and rent tracking system. We anticipate presenting 5 or 6 seminars throughout the year, including the 2 virtual seminars that I just mentioned that will happen next week, and will include information on civics and the rent tracking system's functionality. The proposed expenditure budget in the right-hand blue column is $5,807,034. As I mentioned earlier, the major resources of the Rent Control Board are the people who provide services to the community and advise the board. The first line in this budget is for staff salaries, deferred compensation, and other payouts provided for by the Memoranda of Understanding with the board's bargaining units. And as you all know, we recently completed contract negotiations with the agency employees, and I want to acknowledge their commitment to the community the agency serves and the reasonable terms on which they agreed to settle. The 3.5% cost of living adjustment is agreed to for 2022 is incorporated into this line item. Compensation for the as-needed employees I mentioned earlier is reflected in the as-needed employees line. This year, we're allocating $52,500 for that. Health insurance costs continue to rise with a projected increase of 8% as of January 2023. With some of the insurance costs are offset by employee contributions towards the cost of the premium for their selected health care plan. PERS costs there are several items related to retirement costs for employees in the fiscal year 22-23 budget. The retirement contributions in line 513000 are set at a contribution rate of 29.54% of staff salaries, up 13% from 26.16 before. And just as a reminder, the agency does not pay into Social Security for our employees, so PERS is essentially the equivalent of Social Security for private sector employees. After 2 years of deferral due to the financial impact of the pandemic on the city, this coming year the city is resuming advance payments towards the city's unfunded liability to CalPERS. The agency's second payment of $82,815 is shown in line 513006. The board will also be making the sixth payment on the $519,000 loan that we received from the city in 2017 to accelerate the paying down of our unfunded liability. This cost is a non-operating expense and is paid through the agency's reserves. In the supplies and expenses section of the budget, I want to mention a couple of things. The city assesses the agency for various services such as maintenance of office space and services provided by the Departments of Human Resources, Finance, Purchasing, Facilities, Maintenance, and Information Systems. You'll find details about these changes referred to as indirect costs on pages 5 through 9 of the budget book. The $311,000 in this line represents a 5% increase over last year's allocations. Election costs of approximately $7,000 to fill 3 board seats and cover the cost of a possible charter amendment are included in the other cost line item, which also includes costs for televising 13 board meetings. The proposed budget allocates $75,000 in legal expenses to cover the direct costs of litigation, including discovery, investigation, court filings, trial preparation, and outside counsel if needed. If the board's legal fees are higher than $75,000, the board has a designated reserve of approximately $42,000 for legal expenses. If there's a need, these funds can be moved into the fiscal year's allocations with board approval. As I mentioned earlier, to ensure the success of the Infor property and rent tracking system, the agency has entered into a professional services agreement with TruePoint Solutions for ongoing support. The PSA provides for payments of services as they are rendered and allocates funds to continually enhance and expand the board's Infor public sector configuration. This line also covers the services of the board's lobbyists and other consulting services. The capital outlay section totals $73,400, which in addition to covering physical modifications to the public counter area and staff workspaces, also covers the costs of servers for the database and document management systems, computer-related purchases, the lease on the copier, and includes $15,500 in payments for participation in the city's computer equipment replacement program, which provides for computer replacements every 4 years, ensuring the agency is able to take advantage of newer computer technology and maintain functionality with the rest of the city's systems. Lyma and I are happy to answer any questions you might have about the specific line items or general questions. Or if you want we can look at the revenue section next, and then we can hold the questions after that.
Does anyone have anything they want to ask of staff right at the moment, or do we want to let her go to the next section?
I'm fine with the next section. I just wanted to know, are there public comments on this item, Anastasia?
Alvin has not messaged me any.
Okay, just making sure, like, we would take the public comment at the end of Tracy's presentation.
Yep, Alvin, I'm sure will let us know if anything changes between now and the end of the presentation.
Okay. So we'll turn to the revenue, which is explained starting on page 16 of the budget book. And page 28 summarizes the board's sources of revenue. Total revenue projected for 22-23 is approximately $6,108,000 based upon a $228 per unit registration fee and billing 26,620 units. We also anticipate collecting approximately $6,000 of past due fees from previous years for a total of $6,075,000 in registration fees. During the year, as certain units become eligible for fee waivers or are granted exemptions, refunds are issued to owners. We anticipate refunds of approximately $9,000, and this results in registration fee revenue of $6,066,000. The other major source of revenue in previous years has been interest earnings on city-invested rent control funds. This source has contributed less to our revenue in recent years due to low interest rates. For the next year, the city treasurer is estimating a rate of return on invested funds of 0.8%, resulting in anticipated interest earnings of just $36,000. The other sources of revenue are fairly de minimis and include $2,000 for administrative record charges, $2,200 in filing fees, and $1,800 in miscellaneous charges, altogether totaling $6,000. This total projected revenue of $6,108,000 and projected expenses of $5,807,000, the proposed budget projects savings of approximately $301,000, which will help replenish the reserve account that will be reduced by this year's deficit of approximately $220,000. And finally, I just want to thank Ms. Noseworthy again for her hard and very detail-oriented work in preparing the budget. We're happy to answer any questions that you have, and then the board should vote to set the budget for public hearing and adoption on Thursday, June 9th. Let me stop sharing this.
Lima, thank you so much. Is there going to be another budget from Ms. Noseworthy?
Yes, there is.
Oh, good. Very good. Very good.
I can't say for sure, but I sure hope so. Yes.
Yeah, me too. I hope I speak for all of us when I say how very fortunate we are to have a staff that is so astute and so knowledgeable and so thorough and so darn accurate. I think my fellow commissioners have a couple of questions or comments about this part of the budget that we were saving for now. I don't see any public speakers on this item. Commissioner Terosis?
So first of all, I just want to acknowledge our staff. I know I've said it before, but I want to say it again, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for all of the work that you've done during COVID. I know it's been very difficult and challenging, especially because we are dealing with people sometimes in really life or death situations and in crises. And I know it's been even more so amplified during the pandemic. Thank you for reaching a resolution here on our contract, and thank you for all of the work that you've put in. And so I just want to acknowledge that the staff, it takes a village, obviously. I would also say, I think the budget is pretty status quo for me. I don't see anything that looks different than normal. I just want to know, Tracy, do we ever ask for any sort of public input when we come up with our budget, or it's pretty much just balancing the books when we produce our annual budget?
Well, we do hold the public hearing on the budget, which you will be setting for June 9th. So, right. But what type of input are you thinking?
Yeah, I just want to make sure, I just want to be clear. First of all, I think that this is a very transparent budget. I think if anyone comes and looks at the way that we are explaining each line item, It's very clear, and I don't think that you normally see that from other government agencies. So I do want to commend you on just the transparency. I want to make sure that for whatever reason, we don't get very many public comments here, and that if there are priorities that members of the public have brought forward to us in putting together a budget and anticipating what we should be spending our money on, that we're hearing from them. So I just wanted to know, like, were there weren't any like public comments or public individuals who came to weigh in on what the priorities of the agency should be to you, correct?
That's correct. I mean,
Okay.
We're engaged throughout the year, and we have a sense of what can be helpful. But right, I mean, we're looking for public comment next month when we've set this for the public hearing on June 9th. But
yeah,
we're always open to hearing from people.
Sure, and I say that because I think like even though this seems pretty status quo, like the budget is a statement of our values as an agency and what we think we are prioritizing, right? So I just want to be clear that I hope members of the public will weigh in, hopefully at our next public hearing, because oftentimes, all of us here get a lot of feedback from our constituents, but if we need to create a new program or if we need to do things differently, like that starts with how we budget our money. And so I think I just want to be clear to the public, and I also want to be clear to my fellow commissioners, like I welcome public comment on the budget. And I hope that it doesn't even necessarily need to be at a meeting. It could be in advance of us putting this together. So I just want to encourage people to make their voice heard, and thank you to the staff for always getting it right every year. So thanks a lot, and I don't have any questions.
Okay, seeing no other, I want to announce that our chair, Commissioner Duran, is back and has joined the meeting and will be taking over chair duties for the remainder of the meeting. Do we need to take a vote on the budget, Tracy, before we finish up the item?
You just need to set it for public hearing. So you could entertain a motion to set it for public hearing on June 9th and for adoption that evening.
So to finish up this item, and before we turn it over to Commissioner Duran, I'll entertain a motion to set this for public hearing on June 9th.
I will move.
Commissioner Charose is waving her hand, and a second by Chair Duran.
No, I think Steve, Chair Duran so moved, and I'll second.
Chair Duran so moved, and Commissioner Charose is seconded. Can we call the roll, please?
Yes, Commissioner Phyllis.
Yes.
Commissioner Troses.
Yes.
Commissioner Sultan. Vice Chair Foster.
Yes.
And Chair Duran.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Take it away, Steve.
Okay, thank you very much for stepping in my absence. I'm sorry for being late, everybody. But it looks like we finished item 12. So moving on to number 14, board discussion items. The board discussion regarding the feasibility of an amendment to the rent control charter to give the board authority to freeze rents under certain circumstances. Is there a report for this item? I'm not sure.
Well, no, the commissioners had asked that we bring back this item. So it's open for your discussion unless Ms. Regan would like to make a statement.
I was just going to say what you just said, Ms. Condon.
Perfect. All right. Then open for discussion. Would any commissioners like to discuss this subject?
Do we have public comment on this?
Did Alvin send you the list? He had sent it to me. He may not have forwarded it to you.
Yes,
Hang on
we
a
do
sec.
have.
Let me check.
We have Mike Soloff, Phyllis Dudek, Bill Davids, Elizabeth Lehrer, Shelley Backman, and Sonia Sultan.
Got it. Okay, I do see that now. I'll go from the top of the list. So for those listening up there, the list is Phyllis Dudek, Bill Davids, and then Elizabeth Lehrer. So we'll go in that order, and then I'll get the remainder after they speak. They've each requested 3 minutes. So Secretary Ho, if Phyllis Dudick is on and ready to go, if you could help set her up to speak.
Yes. Ms. Dudick, you will have 3 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm on the phone this time. Honorable commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you directly tonight. I would like to reiterate the concern many of us have in rent-controlled units regarding the automatic 6% rent increase tied to a minimum of 8% inflation, which becomes permanent to the MRA for each unit. As we see, we are in a situation that has not occurred in many years and has triggered this requirement. If this were to continue with the automatic increases, 6%, this could prove devastating to many residents now under rent control in Santa Monica. I am asking the board, in an effort to prepare for the worst and hope for the best, to consider an amendment to the charter, removing the automatic requirement of 6% increase tied to 8% inflation, and allow the board to discuss and confer with City Council regarding rent increases in times of high inflationary economic times. Thank you for your attention and your consideration. That is my statement.
Thank you, Ms. Dudick. I really appreciate your comments. Moving on to the next speaker, we have Bill Davids, and he's requested 3 minutes. Mr. Ho, if you could help him get ready, that would be great.
Yes. Mr. Davids, you will have 3 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Basically, as was just demonstrated with the general adjustment announcement of 6%, unfortunately, in times of economic stress, the current charter simply makes economic stress even more stressful for renters, rent-regulated renters. I sent email correspondence to all commissioners, and I indicated that at the April 28th meeting, you were looking towards West Hollywood and Culver City as models for your apartment registry. And I would absolutely urge you to look to those cities and other municipalities, other rent-regulated jurisdictions, to see the way they essentially anticipate and respond to times of economic stress. The charter should absolutely be more flexible than it is and should provide you with the power to protect renters in a more thorough, comprehensive way. Unfortunately, right now, the increases are going to be built into our MARs. So this is going to be an ongoing situation for renters. And as I indicated in my letter to you, the charter needs to be anticipatory. It needs to have flexibility, and it also needs to be responsive to bad economic times, whether it's times of hyperinflation or the pandemic. I don't have to remind you that two of your objectives, among many others, number one, to avoid the displacement of tenants from their units, and number two, I hate to use this because it's turning into a cliche, it's becoming very trite, but it's basically to assure that long-term seniors are able to age in place. So I think the important consideration now is to refer to other rent-regulated jurisdictions as models and reconsider the way the general adjustment is imposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Davis, for your comments. I have next Elizabeth Lurer, and then I believe I had Shelley Vicknan, Sonia Sultan, Michael Soloff, and Mr. Ho. Are there any other speakers that I'm missing?
Yes, it looks like we have Sue Himmelrich joining us, and also we just received notification that Danny Zane will also be joining us.
Okay, very good. Then we'll add them to the queue as well. Thank you very much. So if you would assist with Elizabeth Lurer, Mr. Ho, I'd appreciate it.
Yes. Ms. Lurer, you've been unmuted. You will have 3 minutes to address the board. Please go ahead.
Hi, Commissioners. Thank you for letting me speak. Wow, we have a lot of really incredible, experienced people lined up to speak. So I will be mostly interested in hearing what you all have to say. But I just wanted to lend my voice to encouraging that if it is time to revisit the charter amendment regarding increases, that we do it now before it's too late. I know it can't do anything for this year, but for next year. And I did write a letter, and I think that what I said was that most people, most of rent control tenants at this point don't know what their rent will be in this September. And I think they're going to be surprised, and I would just hope that we can do something now before it's too late to address the future. So thank you for letting me speak, and I look forward to the other speakers coming up. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker we have is Shelley, I believe it's Vicknan, or Vicknan perhaps. Secretary Ho, if you could help.
Actually, it looks like Ms. Vaknin has dropped off. Ms. Vaknin, if you would still like to speak to the board on item 14, please rejoin the meeting and we will get you set up. We could move on to the next speaker if you would like. Very good, yes. Then I understand the next one is Sonia Sultan. Yes, Ms. Sultan, you will have 3 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I can just speak into the telephone?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I haven't done it before. Yes, good evening. This is such an important matter. We look at this 6% increase. It's clear that this wasn't really what the voters intended when Measure GA was voted in place. So and how we've experienced so many years of low inflation that this wasn't a problem, but now we can see how inflation can just escalate higher and higher and really get out of control. And it's devastating so many individuals and families in every aspect of their life. But most important thing is for people to be able to maintain their homes. And repeated rent increases of this magnitude or anything near this magnitude will devastate low-income, many of whom are already extremely rent burdened, or at least rent burdened, and cause more and more tenants to be priced out of their rent control units and possibly end up homeless, which is the last thing we want. The community, we want our seniors to be able to age in place. We also want our lower income families to remain in their homes as their children matriculate through our wonderful schools and continue to stay in their homes and enrich our community with their presence. You know, we need to build in flexibility for the rent board so that they're not forced, as you are this year, to rubber stamp such a huge increase that is going to devastate people this year. And if it continued, it'll just be magnified and really undercut our whole system of protecting the homes of members of our community. So I look forward to hearing proposals as you study this for how we can do a charter amendment that could modify this situation so it won't occur again. This has to be a one-time unfortunate blip in our protection of our low-income renters. So I hope you can all put your heads together and figure out how best to get this done ASAP. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Sultan. The next speaker we have, Michael Soloff. Secretary Ho, if you could assist.
Yes, Mr. Soloff, you will have 3 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead. Mr. Soloff, you have been unmuted. Go ahead. Oh, it appears that Mr. Soloff has disconnected. Mr. Soloff, if you can hear us, please rejoin if you still wish to speak, and we will get you set up.
Okay, then while that happens, we can move on then to Denny Zane.
Yes, Mr. Zane, you have been unmuted. You will have 3 minutes to address the board. Please go ahead.
Good evening. Good evening, members of the Rent Control Board. Thank you for holding this very important discussion. It's really crucial, I think, that we re-engage this issue. A formulation of Measure GA that served us very well for a decade is not serving well now, and the reasons are clear. Normally, inflation was much lower, but also normally inflation was, frankly, normal. This year, our inflationary pressures are quite abnormal, and they're driven by things like food shortages driven by a war overseas, disruptions of the supply chain driven by a pandemic, all things, of course, nobody in 2012 when GA was discussed could ever have anticipated. And what that means is that we have an inflation rate that has little bearing on the actual costs of operating a building. The purpose of the general adjustment is to offset the cost increases that a property owner might experience during the course of the year. But increases in food prices are not ascribed to the operation of the building. Increases in used car prices, for example, or increases in oil prices, which is apart from the utilities that we normally use in our buildings. Those things are not part of a property owner's increases in expenses, but they are reflected and are a key part of the reason why this inflationary spiral is so high. This could never have been anticipated, and thus we need to, I think, urge the City Council to have a discussion and debate about, with your advice, about changes to the charter that need to be made to protect tenants. That will require a ballot measure. The Rent Control Board is not empowered to put a ballot measure on the ballot charter amendment, but the City Council is. But they need to hear from you, and they will hear from us, that they need to act swiftly, perhaps along with the other recommendations you have made about changes in the Rent Control Charter to remedy this situation. I think the suggestion on your agenda about and 14 about freezing rents, for example, is probably not the right option. The capping increases in some fashion, capping percent of increases, triggered perhaps by certain circumstances, are the sorts of things that could, I think, be responsive to the crisis that we will otherwise experience. So it's to you, I think, to provide the leadership to direct the City Council's attention to this matter and to commit your cooperation with them to develop a formulation that will work.
I'm sorry, Mr. Zane, that has been your time.
Can you finish his thought? Yeah, can you finish his thought?
Yes, Mr. Zane, you have been unmuted. Please continue.
I've stopped thinking, so it's okay. I've stopped thinking, and I can stop talking. And it's time for you to talk.
Thank you, Mr. Zane. Appreciate your comments. Mr. Ho, is Mayor Hillenrich in the queue?
No, I was mistaken. I'm sorry. That was actually Michael Soloff, and he is back in the queue.
Okay, very good. Then whenever he's ready, Mr. Soloff, you're free to
Mr. Soloff? Yes, Mr. Soloff, you will have 3 minutes to address the board. You have been unmuted. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm speaking tonight in my capacity as a co-chair of Santa Monicans Renters' Rights, but I am also the husband of Mayor Sue Himmelrich, and she pays the phone bill, so that's why her name showed up in your queue. Following up on what Denny said, we already have in the crisis level portions of low-income renters who are paying portions of their limited incomes rent. And why we have circulating now a ballot measure to try and raise funds to help address the situation. But we're going to have rent increases of 6% on top of that. Take that situation as well as hit. They're just above levels and put them in a very low position. So that's not a substitute for finding a way to appropriately address both the needs of landlords to earn their fair return, but also not allow situations where there's exceptional inflation, particularly as Mr. Payne pointed out, in items that not actually reflect costs of operating a building. While there is the monetary cap, that effectively helps limit the pain for renters who are paying higher levels of rent in the distribution rent-controlled units, and those are more likely to be renters who can also absorb increases better. So unfortunately, we at SMER are looking at this issue, but it's complex what the right exact solution is. There's no question that we need you, both the board and the staff, with your expertise, look at this and help lead the discussion of suggestions. We need the city council, city staff do the same, and particularly because we're talking about putting on a ballot measure this year to change the charter, this is the time to do it and try and get both bodies as well as community thinking about what the best way is to address this, so we can include something in the ballot. So we urge that you guys put your mind to it. We will put our mind to it. We are going to press the city council and city staff to be doing it all at the same time, so hopefully we can come up with fair, equitable, and effective solution to this problem for renters in Santa Monica, protecting also legitimate landlord rights.
I'm sorry, Mr. Soloff, that is your time.
Are there any final comments you'd like to make, Mr. Soloff, to finish your thoughts?
Mr. Soloff, you've been unmuted. Please continue.
Sorry, I'm not sure at what point I got cut off. I had completed my thought.
Okay.
I think we got it. It was just a couple words here and there, but I for one got it.
Okay, the bottom line is we all have to right now come up with, we have to all work, staff, city council, fair and equitable to address this issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. You're kind of cutting in and out. It sounds like you were finishing your thought, Mr. Soloff. Thank you very much for your comments. Mr. Ho, has Beckman returned to the queue?
No, she has not.
Okay. Are there any other speakers in queue requesting to speak at this time?
No, no other speaker requests have come in.
Okay. Thank you very much. Then I'll turn it to my fellow commissioners. I see a couple of hands. I saw Vice Chairperson Foster first, and then Commissioner Phyllis, and Commissioner Terosis. Go ahead, Vice Chair.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate all the public comment. We've received many, many emails from stakeholders, landlords, tenants, activists, and we really appreciate all of the input. I just think it's really important during our discussion of this that we establish a couple of things. Number one, I want to ask staff a really quick question. Timing-wise, since we already took a vote on the other items last time, and those are advancing to council, when we add or don't add this item, how specific do we need to? Is it in the interest of getting things to council quickly enough that they're even able logistically to act on them so that we can vote on this important set of ballot measures for the rent board? Do we need to kick this over to city staff with your staff's help, or do we have to come up with the exact potential relief formula mathematics today? Staff, can you answer that question before I make my other comment?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. So what's on your agenda for tonight? Can you hear me okay?
Can you speak up a little more?
Yes. What's on your agenda for tonight is the discussion item that was put on by Commissioner Sultan at the last meeting, which only involves the circumstances under which a rent freeze may be appropriate during times like a pandemic, similar to the way LA City froze rents in response to the pandemic. So that is the discussion item before you this evening. If you wanted to set a different discussion item based on some of the comments you've heard, that would have to be for another meeting.
Can I ask a question?
Hang on a sec. Hang on. Commissioner Foster.
Well, it's okay. If Commissioner Terosis has a follow-up question to what staff just said, that's totally great.
Okay, Commissioner Terosis.
Otherwise, I'll make a comment.
So just quick question, Ms. Regan, do we have any jurisdiction as an agency to freeze rents? Because I had asked this question at the beginning of the pandemic when the city of LA was looking at these things, and I was told that that is squarely in city council's jurisdiction and that legally we cannot. So I just want to clarify, what is our jurisdiction here?
Correct. At the time, the charter doesn't give you the authority to do that. So okay. Commissioner Sultan asked for a discussion item to see if there was a possible consensus around an amendment to the charter to give you all the authority to do that. That's what was put on.
I thought it was to impose a cap. That is what we had discussed.
Yeah, that is what it was, and it was my item. It wasn't Commissioner Sultan. You may have seconded.
I went back and reviewed the motion that you all made, and the motion that you made was made by Commissioner Sultan about freezing rents. Yes, I reviewed the recording myself, and that is what the vote was that was taken on. So if you all want to discuss the 6% cap, that's not on your agenda for tonight.
I have a point of personal or a point of information. I also requested a discussion item. Any commissioner can request a discussion item and it can be put on the agenda. If you only put on Commissioner Sultan's and you didn't put on mine, I guess that's my next question is why is that? Because there was definitely a discussion item requested to be put on by me at the last meeting.
So when I reviewed the recording, the only discussion item that was requested was from Commissioner Sultan, and there was a vote on that video.
Okay, Regan, Allison Regan, there was a different motion made in the middle of public comment on item 7. It was not during the discussion of the charter amendment. So it was actually put on by Commissioner Phyllis at that time. So it was directed by Commissioner Phyllis, but it was during like item 7.
I saw that. That was not a discussion item. I reviewed that as well. I reviewed that as well. What is on your agenda is what is about the freezing of the rents. If you want to have a discussion about, and it's not too late, if you want to have a discussion about the rent cap, you'd have to put that on the next agenda.
So back to my original question, maybe we can straighten this out. So a rent freeze is possible in other jurisdictions, like one of the callers mentioned, because they do their city laws by ordinance, and ours is by charter. And that's why we don't have just the discretion to do it at will. We can't just, we're not a legislative body with an elected mayor. We don't have that form of government. That's why it's in the charter. We can only do a charter change to fix or to change anything. And the will of the voters would have to, we would recommend something to council. Our staff, city staff would advise council on any method to assist our tenants in times of great inflation. And then stakeholders can petition the council, who ultimately only they can put something on the charter. And I fear we're running out of time to get things to the LA County registrar in a timely, like if we put this off for another month and then send it to council, it's going to be too late, is my concern.
You can have a special meeting if you'd like to discuss this. And then if you're concerned about not being able to get it to the council in time.
Okay. I see a hand up. Commissioner Phyllis, if you're done with your comments, Chairperson Foster, Commissioner Phyllis was next to speak on my list. So go ahead, Commissioner Phyllis.
So I guess I'm disappointed to hear that my discussion item was not properly agendized, even though it was specifically requested. I will say when I read the agenda item, I don't read it so narrowly as to say freeze rents under some circumstances is precluding us from having a meaningful conversation about what limiting or capping rents can be under certain circumstances. I also think it is embarrassing for this board as a body to have promoted ballot measures that were vetted in January when we knew inflation was out of control, and now we're kicking the can down the road on this one. We need to prioritize it. This should be our most important ballot measure. It should be far more important than extending term limits, far more important than extending our own power. This protects our constituents. This protects tenants. This protects the people who elected us in times of crisis. And now, because items weren't agendized or direction was not followed, we're being deprived of the opportunity to have a meaningful conversation about this. So I will happily go to City Council, but I do think we need to pass a ballot measure, first and foremost, of the utmost priority, to give tenants relief in a time of crisis where they have no bargaining power, no leverage, nothing to combat the unbelievable, unprecedented, historic inflation that we are experiencing all across the globe. But in Santa Monica, there are people who are suffering. Those people are my priority. I'm disappointed we cannot have that conversation tonight, but I absolutely will be having those conversations behind the scenes with people on City Council. I encourage members of the public to engage us because we care. We want this to be on the ballot. We need to be able to have the flexibility to make emergency findings, to impose a reduced cap to keep people in their homes during times of crisis. That is what we need to do. That is what we should be discussing tonight. And that is what I look forward to discussing with people on City Council.
Okay. So since it's not on the agenda this evening, can we take note to make it on the next one? And whether we have a special meeting to do that or not, we can all vote on that. Do you, Commissioner Phillips, you still have the floor. Do you want to add your request as a discussion item for the next meeting?
I was planning to address this later, but I will address this right now. This is going to be my final meeting for the Santa Monica Rent Control Board, so I don't think that it is appropriate for me to necessarily ask or suggest what to do next. I will be tendering my resignation this evening. It has nothing to do with the exchange that just happened. It has to do with the fact that I am relocating out of Santa Monica. Serving on this board has obviously been one of the greatest honors of my life. I care deeply about serving this community. I care deeply about the work that we have done leading on pass-through reform, things that keep tenants in their homes, leading on rent relief. That is who we are as a body. That is who we are as Santa Monicans. And so I defer to my esteemed commissioners as to what the appropriate course of action should be. And I would ask for the opportunity to briefly address my resignation prior to adjournment.
Okay. So, well, that was a surprise announcement to me, so to take a second for me to absorb all that. But I think the question is a good one. I'm willing to think more about it. I have, before I personally make a decision as to whether it should be a discussion item and exactly how it should be worded. In the meantime, Commissioner Trosis was in the queue next to speak. If you are finished with your comments, Commissioner Phyllis, Commissioner Trosis, you can proceed.
Great. Thank you, Chair Duran. Commissioner Phyllis, I will address your resignation later, but I wholeheartedly agree with everything that you've said, period. That is why we are here. We are here to protect folks. And like Mr. David said, Mr. Davids, by the way, thank you for always having such really thorough analysis and coming to us. And quite frankly, like as well for Mr. Millen, I received a very nice email from him with his thoughts. I mean, I think everyone has thought about this, and I really do appreciate it from all sides. I have to say, though, like Mr. David said, we are here to protect the members of our community, to entitle them to age in place gracefully and without harassment. And I think, you know, for some folks, this rent increase is a life or death situation. This is not tenable for a lot of people. And no, Commissioner Phyllis is absolutely right. This is at the heart of what we do and probably the most important thing. So without continuing to grandstand, I think really what we're talking about here, Chair Duran, is urgently getting this on the ballot, period. Like, how do we most expeditiously make changes to our charter in order to protect our tenants? And how do we do that? Unfortunately, just like this was voted into the charter by the voters, we do not have the authority as a body to just say, yep, we're imposing a different cap. So what we really need to at this point is for City Council to lean in and work with us. And as we bring the other items that we voted on to pass to City Council for potential consideration then on the ballot, this item needs to be first and foremost in terms of what can we do to address this formula that we have, especially in case anyone didn't remember, we're still under a state of emergency, right? So what can we do, especially given the fact that we're in a state of emergency, and how can City Council come and protect our tenants and come to the voters, you, the people who voted this formula in the first place, to ensure that we're protecting everyone? And so I would ask that we have City Council put forward a formula and bring it to the voters so that we can protect them. And I think that that's what we need to do. And I don't think that we should continue to stall here because we need to get it on the ballot, right, Steve? So like, even if we said we're going to have a special meeting in 2 weeks, that just further delays the process. I think we need to say, we've put a package forward to City Council. We are telling them here, and we will tell them offline. They need to also bring forward either some sort of new formula. I am not prepared here today because I didn't have a staff report with options. I'm not prepared here today to say this should be the new formula. But I think between now and the next City Council meeting, when potentially this is discussed, we need to work together behind the scenes to come up with something that actually protects our tenants. That's what I would say about what we need to do tonight.
That's exactly what I was trying to say and trying to ask staff about the timing. I agree that having another meeting is going to take too long. I think it's really clear that a lot of renters have this squarely in their sights and on their radar and are more than within their rights to go straight to council members and ask for one of them to put a 13 item on, or just simply, I checked with our staff during council's discussion of our potential ballot measure, they have the power to make amendments and changes and could add something right then. So I know that our staff is already working with city staff in anticipation of all of these things in a professional and collegial way, just as a way of working with the 3 items we've already voted on. But yeah, I mean, this needs to be handled quickly and expeditiously, and I think it's time to move it on to council and the people to work on this discussion probably at council.
Okay, so I'm cognizant of what's being said now, but also what we have to stick with as to what's been identified on the agenda to discuss at this meeting. Council, I don't know how much more we can dive into the specifics of this without it being agendized this evening. Maybe we said enough and we can do it behind the scenes, but we do have to get back to what was agendized.
Well, wouldn't somebody have to move it as worded? And if nobody does, then nobody does, right?
Yeah, we're having a discussion. We're not moving anything.
Yeah, and we can move with amendments. We can move with amendments.
Can I ask for a point of clarification here?
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you, Chair Duran. I would suggest that in order to actually do the work, we create an ad hoc subcommittee of our rent control board members with staff to work on a potential proposal. And I would also ask that our city council do the same, and perhaps we could all work together behind the scenes instead of further delaying this process, and then come forward after the ad hoc committees, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, have come to some sort of proposal to bring forward to city council. I don't know if how would that be amenable to anyone? And Ms. Regan, can we do that?
You can put together a subcommittee to further look at this issue.
Would anyone else support that?
That's the issue is time, right? I mean, it wasn't that to put an ad hoc together, and I don't think we have the time to really do that. Would that need to be agendized and then voted on?
No,
or can we?
because it's not subject to the Brown Act. If it's not a majority of members, let's say it's 2 members that's on the ad hoc committee, it's not subject to the Brown Act because it's ad hoc, not a standing committee. We work it out in the next couple of weeks, and we hopefully get city council to do the same thing so that we can move forward while not waiting for another meeting. You know what I'm saying?
I would just like to check the timing. I think we might have more time than we think. Ms. Condon, can you remind us when the city council generally takes action on these and when it has to go to the county?
Well, it has to go to the county no later than the beginning of August. And I know that the council has on their agenda in early June just the placement of some items on the ballot. So the time is short, but we do have more time to work on this. There have been times where we've forwarded suggestions to the council in June, but I think we could set another meeting 2 weeks from now to have more discussion about this with direction, or as Commissioner Terosis is suggesting, they could establish a subcommittee and we could work with the subcommittee. And then at the June 9th meeting, the board could take an action based upon the work of the subcommittee to forward it to the city council.
So it has to go from the subcommittee back to the full board at the next meeting?
I don't know.
No, we can delegate. We can delegate authority to them and just say report back. You don't have to have.
I'm literally just suggesting an informal working group on an ad hoc to help resolve this in a more expeditious way.
I'll move that.
Can I
I'll move it.
suggest both the ad hoc committee and also a meeting in a couple of weeks? I would appreciate some direction from this body as to what you're talking about. Is the discussion item to be changing the 6% cap? Is that what we're talking about? I'm unclear as to what we're talking about.
Okay. Let me clarify. I am moving that we request City Council to consider solutions like a rent freeze, as was agendized on our meeting, relevant solutions to address the huge rent increases that our folks are going to see. So that is what I would move to do. So I am moving that we request City Council consider those solutions. Additionally, thank you. Additionally, I'm saying in order to help expedite the solutions, that we do an informal ad hoc committee to help City Council, because it doesn't appear that we have an actual direct suggestion for language at this point. Does that make sense?
I think I hear you, but I think that what we need to nail down, and maybe the reason why a special meeting would be beneficial, is we got to have specifics. What are the solutions? I don't think we could just. I don't know how helpful it would be with the timing that we're dealing with to go with. I'm sorry, I have the floor. Hang on, I have the floor. I don't think that it would be a wise solution to just say, come up with solutions, and here you go, City Council, because of the time frame that we try and get it on the ballot this term. I'm all in favor of an ad hoc committee doing that, getting together to come up with what these solutions should be. But I understand what Ms. Regan is saying, that we also need specifics so that it can be agendized. And I'm not clear what that is either at this point. I have Commissioner Phyllis who's had her hand up. Go ahead, Commissioner Phyllis.
So I agree with you, Chair Duran, on everything, except I don't think we need to re-agendize this for the Rent Control Board. We can delegate authority to the ad hoc to communicate directly with City Council and say, look, we recognize that this is a problem. We delegate the authority to make the specific recommendations to the Rent Control Board or to the City Council to this ad hoc on behalf of the Rent Control Board, so they can do it more quickly and we don't have to re-agendize the findings at our next meeting. And I think that gets the expediency we need, and it also gives City Council, and I just want to be really clear, I'm not sure, Commissioner Terosis, if you'll accept this as a friendly amendment, but in addition to considering the potential solution of a rent freeze, I would also make a friendly amendment that another potential solution would be to create a mechanism through which we can make emergency findings to implement a more restrictive cap on what annualized rents can be increased in times of crisis, right? And we would have to make enumerated findings. We'd have to make, inflation. We could set an inflation threshold. We could do other things. But that's another solution that I see as a middle ground to a pure moratorium or freeze.
I accept that friendly amendment. Thanks.
How does that sound, Ms. Regan? Does that work?
That's very helpful. Yes, thank you. That's the specificity that I was looking for.
So was that a second, or do you still need a second?
So
I seconded it and I had a friendly amendment.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay, then I guess we'll have to do a roll call vote on that.
Yes, Commissioner.
Go ahead.
Commissioner Terosis.
Yes.
Commissioner Sultan.
Yes.
Commissioner Phyllis.
Yes.
Vice Chair Foster.
Yes.
And Chair Duran.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. Do we need to discuss who's going to be on this ad hoc?
So now we can choose. We can
Yeah.
choose who would like to be on it. Who would like to be on this ad hoc? I see Vice Chair Foster. Any other? Anyone else?
Well, if Commissioner Phillips would delay her resignation, I feel like she should be on this subcommittee because I feel like you have some good ideas here that you just came up with.
I'd welcome that. I can delay it a few weeks so that we can make our findings. So yeah, I'll delay it until let me see. I'll announce that my resignation will be effective May 27th. And I can continue to work through then, but if you don't think that that's enough time, I don't want to hold open the spot. I will represent that if my resignation is effective immediately, I obviously won't be a voting member of the board, but I remain deeply concerned about this issue and would be happy to make myself available to the ad hoc as a former board member, and therefore you wouldn't run into a Brown Act issue.
Yeah, we get 3 voices for the price of 2, actually. That's a consideration.
I'd be happy to maintain to keep my resignation effective at the conclusion of this meeting to both allow for the space for the commissioners who are serving on this, and I trust that they will make space for me as well.
You wouldn't want to wait until June 3rd, right? The end of the week of the next week.
I can't.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'm happy to have you and Commissioner Foster do it until such point that you resign.
I think Carolyn, I was thinking you two should be the board members on it. I can resign effective tonight and continue to support you as you see it through.
Okay. Does Commissioner Sultan or Commissioner Chair Duran want to do it? I don't want to take someone's opportunity away.
Well, I'm interested in is this something that you want to sit on, Commissioner Triosis?
I'm someone who says yes to everything, Chair Duran. I hope you know that. So, of course I'll do it, but I want to give space. I want to leave space for others who are less, participatory.
Okay.
I'm happy to have you do it.
You'll do it?
No, I mean, I'm happy to have you do it.
Okay. I guess Vice Chair Foster and myself will do it with Commissioner Phyllis's technical assistance.
Okay. Very good. Do we need a vote on that, Ms. Regan, or is it done?
You can do that by consensus. It's fine if everyone agrees.
Great.
All in favor of that? Show your hands. Aye.
Aye.
And I would just pass along a message that I hope City Council will likewise establish an ad hoc committee if they're serious about protecting tenants.
Yep.
Agreed. Okay, so that I'm clear, then I believe that item 14 is done. Am I wrong on that, or am I right on that?
You're right.
Okay. Moving on then to item number 15, written communications. Do any of the commissioners want to address that item?
No, I would just say I appreciate Miss Maggio Thanawala for her comments and read them thoroughly, and just thank you for the written communication.
Okay, now my understanding is that we need a roll call vote to receive and file this. Would you like to move that we do that, Commissioner Triosis?
Sure, although sorry for my ignorance, but why is this written communication different than any other written communication that we all receive? Is there a reason that this is agendized and others are not?
Yeah.
Commissioner Condon or Ms. Regan, can you answer that?
Well, it was a written communication that we received in advance of the meetings, and it related to a subject that had been on the board's agenda. So we put it on as a written communication so you would officially receive it.
Got it. Okay.
I don't believe there's a need to have a motion to receive it.
Great. Well, it's been received, and I appreciate it.
Okay.
I also appreciate it.
What was that? I missed that. I'm sorry.
Just also expressing gratitude for the written communication.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Then it is received and it'll be filed. Before we adjourn, Commissioner Phyllis, did you want to say anything else?
Thank you, Chair Drawn. Yes, I am with a heavy heart resigning effective upon the adjournment of this meeting tonight. It has been a great honor to serve on this board and to represent people who often are unheard and unrepresented in city government. I appreciate the openness and inclusiveness of this board. I think it has long been a place where real grassroots activists do the less glamorous work that keeps our residents in the city. And that is what I love about it. I'm grateful for the opportunities to have served with you all. I'm really proud of the work that we have done together. And leaving Santa Monica is very, very bittersweet. I would ask that upon my resignation, that this board not fill my seat with an appointment because we are so close to the November election, which would otherwise be an open seat because I am terming out. That I think it would give an unfair advantage for someone to be appointed in July of this year and head into an election with a seat that should have been open because I'm terming out. I hope that that decision will continue to make this, will continue to allow people who run for Democratic office, who care about their community, who don't necessarily play the insider baseball to serve in Santa Monica. Because this is a deeply democratic community of people who are diverse in so many ways. And I think the best way to ensure a representative body is through an elective process and not through an appointed process. I understand that will not be deliberated on tonight, but I do very much appreciate everyone taking into consideration that request. And I just want to conclude with my gratitude for you all. We have worked together in the trenches, we've worked together on campaigns, we've worked together on ballot measures, and through it all, I have never questioned the value of anyone on this board. I know that we all care deep about this community and keeping people in this community. And I hope that those are the values that this board will continue to carry on in the future. So thank you for having given me the opportunity to serve. And signing off.
Well, thank you so much, Commissioner Phyllis. You know, of all the group, it's me who's the crier, as I've shown so many times. And so I'll try and get through this myself. It's been a pleasure working with you. Your commitment to the city has been unquestionable to the people, to renters, to really fighting for what you believe is right by us, by residents of Santa Monica, for the Rent Control Board. It's been an honor to work with you. Good luck with your future endeavors, whatever they are. I'm sure they will be outstanding. Yeah, so with that, if there's anything else anyone else wants to say, Commissioner Sultan, I saw your hand first, Commissioner Terosis, and then Vice Chair Foster.
I just want to say that this is my first term, and I learned so much from Nicole. Ever since I feel so, wow, I can't even talk. I feel really lucky that I had the opportunity, through this process, through serving on the board, to get to know Nicole and just get to see, like Steve mentioned, her passion for the work, for tenants. It's infectious, and also obviously coupled with a real deep intellect. And she's just taught me so much about, I think, the importance of the work we do, how to do the work we do, and I know that we'll continue, to be in touch, and I'll continue to learn from Nicole. But I just wanted to thank you for everything that you've contributed to the city of Santa Monica, and also to me personally.
Thank you, and I'll always be here. I mean, not here, but here.
Commissioner Terosis.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I obviously wasn't prepared for this, so I think there's a lot more I could say and should say in an eloquent way, which I'll do privately. But Nicole, I'm really obviously disappointed and sad that you're stepping down. But I think that, not that we want to expose your personal business, but really happy for your home and your move, and the fact that, just like me, you came to LA. We all, I think most of us came to LA and really have just found a home here, and have said we're making it our permanent home. So I'm really happy for you. I also just want to say, on a personal note, there's 100% no reason I would be here without Nicole. Nicole recruited me, I should say, I guess. We found common interest immediately upon our first discussion, and she said, hey, I think actually you should run for the Rent Control Board. And I don't even think that was something, I think as women, we always think we want to prove ourselves first. So that was nothing I even thought was possible, or that people would take me seriously. And I have to say, I agree with Nicole. It's been the absolute pleasure of my entire life to be on this board and to be able to work on some of these complex issues. So I totally agree with you, Nicole. I think we've been great partners on pass-throughs and construction-related rent decrease petition process and means and methods assessment, and making sure that at the end of the day, we keep our great housing providers here and in business, but we also protect our tenants. And we make sure really at the end of the day that the bad actors are the ones that are not going to continue. So Nicole, I really just don't think that you're ever going to be replaced. You're intelligent. I'm jealous of how smart you are all the time. And you're able to come up with a cogent thought in a really persuasive way, in a way that I'm never going to be able to do. So just really sad, but super happy for you. And we're going to have a really tough time now. But thanks for being my mentor, because Nicole absolutely taught me everything I knew when I decided to join this board. So thank you.
I know we're going to see more great things from you in the city too.
We will miss you.
Nicole, I can't believe you're leaving us. We wish you so much success. I know that the new neighborhood and region of LA that's getting you and Zach is so lucky to be getting your energy and your brilliance and all of the effort I know you're going to put in the next location and the constituents you're going to serve there. Thank you so much for everything you did. You moved to this town and you dove right into public service, and I know that's going to continue, and your work over at Heart of LA and everything. So we wish you good luck in everything you do.
Thank you.
Agreed. Okay, then that brings us to adjournment. The next meeting is set for June the 9th, at least at this point, it's set for June the 9th, 2022 at 7 p.m. Still to be determined whether it'll be via teleconference or in person in the council chambers. You'll hear for that. So that being said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I would like to adjourn in honor of Commissioner Phyllis's service on the board.
A second. All in favor? Or roll call vote, please. I should do that.
Yes, Commissioner Sultan.
Yes.
Commissioner Teroses? I'm sorry, Commissioner Teroses?
I was muted, yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Phyllis?
Yes, and thank you for that very kind motion.
Vice Chair Foster?
Yes.
And Chair Duran?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, everyone. Be well. Good luck, Commissioner Phyllis.
Thank you all. Good night.
All right,
Good
everybody.
night.